All right, I think in the interest of time, we're going to get started. So welcome all to OA Week 2025. My name is Katarina Shaw, and I'm a Associate Project Officer for Ocean Acidification at the IOC of UNESCO. I just want to point out that this meeting is being recorded. So OA Week is sponsored by 4 sponsoring organizations. And we have first GOA-ON, obviously, the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Second, NOAA, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Third, the IAEA OAICC, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency, Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. And last but not least, the IOC, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. GOA-ON was established in 2012 with just a handful of members, and since then has grown tremendously. It now has over 1,200 members from over 110 countries. GOA-ON also consists of 11 regional hubs, which span across continents and oceanographic regions. We'll be hearing from most of them throughout OA Week. If you're not a member yet, we encourage you to join by visiting goaon.org. So as you may know, OA Week debuted in 2020 and returned in 2021 when events and conferences were postponed due to COVID-19. And the one conference that was postponed was the 5th Symposium for an Ocean in a High CO2 World, which is a nice little moment here for the 6th Symposium, which we'll be introducing in a minute. So following the actual in-person meeting in 2022 in Lima, Peru, the OA Week has become an annual event to maintain momentum around OA research and to provide a virtual platform for the ocean acidification community. We are looking forward to hearing a lot of exchanges and the latest science from around the world. A few notes on housekeeping. We have the new format today. This is a meeting, so the chat is open and you will be able to raise your hand to ask questions. With this, I would like to hand over to Chris Cornwall from the local organizing committee for the welcoming.
Thank you, Katarina. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm going to welcome us with a traditional Māori karakia, which will set the scene for the meeting, and I'll also end on the karakia. Ko te Māori ki runga, ko te Māori ki raro, ko te Māori ki roto, ko te Māori ki raro, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora kia tātou, tō mai te Māori, humie, hui e, tai ki e. And with that, I'll pass over to Dr. Christina McGraw.
Great, thank you, Chris. I will be moderating today's session, so I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for coming. I'm Christina McGraw. I'm an analytical chemist from the University of Otago, so the south of the South Island in New Zealand. And today's meeting is really a discussion, an opportunity to discuss the upcoming Oceans in a High CO2 World Symposium, which will happen next year in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. We do have 4 speakers lined up for you. So first we have Sam Dupont from University of Gothenburg. So he's just going to be speaking for a few minutes to give some context on this conference series. So it only happens every 4 years, and so we know a lot of the ECOPs especially would have never been to one before. So I want to just introduce the series itself to you. Next, I'm going to hand over to Chris Cornwall. So Chris is leading the local organizing committee, and he's also on the international committee. And so he's going to talk about some of the decisions and ideas that these 2 committees are already thinking about, so we can tell you what we have in mind for the conference. Finally, we have Rachel Hale. She'll be wrapping up. She'll be leading some discussions with you because we really want to see what your priorities are. Because this conference only happens every 4 years, this is a really good opportunity to make sure that the community is moving it forward in a way that really gets us all excited. So we just want to learn what your thoughts are on it. And that is it. So with that, I will hand over to Sam.
Thank you, Christina, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited about this event that's going to happen next year, and what I'm going to do now is like take just 5 minutes of your time to give you a little bit of a background on the International Symposium series and what we already gathered as kind of community information regarding the format and so on. So it's the field of ocean acidification, as you know, is relatively new, and the really first big conference was organized in 2004. So that was the first edition of the symposium. It was organized in Paris, and it gathered about 100 people there. It was mostly through the EPOCA, the European Project on Ocean Acidification. And from there, it grew continuously through time. So the second edition was organized in 2008, gathering 200. It grew even more in Monterey for the third edition, and then went down a little bit for different reasons in numbers, but not in quality. So we could see actually a really nice evolution of the field. And the last edition was in 2022 in Peru, where we had kind of an hybrid format for the conference. And there was already at the time a discussion, do we need a 6th edition? Because the field of ocean acidification evolved quite a bit from being a self-contained kind of topic to something that grew bigger, like multiple stressor and so on. So I gathered a little bit of information there when I was in Lima talking to some of the organizers and so on, and there were kind of a mixed feeling. It was like, okay, some people say, yeah, we need this, we need an ocean acidification conference, where others say, okay, maybe we should dissolve and join other bigger conference. To have a more like a community perspective, we organized a survey in 2023 with the OAICC, and that we distributed through a lot of different channels with 15 different questions. And we had answers from all around the world with different levels of career. And I will really briefly summarize what we had. But basically, one of the key question we had is like, do we want to organize a 6th edition? And the community was really clear. Yes, we need one. Some people realize, okay, we just start in the field of acidification. We still need to have this kind of conference. And even more established people said, yes, we need a new conference, but we need to be sure that is evolving with the field. So it's an opportunity now to go through another type of conference with a different format. Maybe that's something we are discussing, and also a different content. Something what we discussed already with the International Scientific Committee, the local committee, and some people on the committee, is that we want to maintain a focus on ocean acidification, but it needs to change. It needs to evolve. It needs to evolve with the new topic. We also thought like it would be really nice to have new blood coming in the field, like people that we've never seen before. And more importantly, break the silos, like break a little bit this idea of chemistry, biology, modeling, policies, and so on, and more like focus on topics that are bigger than that, where people work together. So like a more interdisciplinary approach. We believe so far, I think it's be also really nice to have your feedback on this, but to keep partly a classic scientific conference, so have people have the opportunity to come and present their latest results, of course, but we want something that is a bit more interactive, if possible, more space for discussion. That's something that was very, very clear from the evaluation. So opportunities for discussion, for project, from trainings, for potentially have deliverables, start working group before the conference and take advantage of the conference to start the process and start working together and attract new people. So really a conference that would be about science, but would be about gathering and create kind of bring new communities and create new links. We have a really strong focus on co-creation. And for my last slide, I think I just wanted to make kind of an historical evolution. And you know the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? If you know very little in the field, you overconfident. So that's a graph we started a few years ago at the beginning of the field, realizing when acidification started, we had really high confidence that it would be easy to solve. It will be, okay, all calcifiers are big problems, and then that's it, we're going to fix that. And then through the evolution of the conference, people realize, well, it's a bit more complicated than we expected. We don't really understand why some species are sensitive and others are not, and so on and so on. And then from 2010 and ongoing, then we had this framework. We knew what we didn't know. And we had the cube, like the figure from Jean-Pierre Gattuso and Ulf Riebesel, saying, okay, we need to understand better multiple stressors. We need to understand better ecological response. We need to understand more like time, evolution, and so on. But then I think we fell into another pit of despair, like a decrease in confidence, because people started to realize, okay, this is clearly what we should do, but it's maybe too big. Maybe it's not possible to really have all this knowledge that we thought we needed. So I think we are now in the 6th edition, maybe with an opportunity to go back to the high confidence by focusing more on solutions and co-design and work together to actually find solutions for acidification and not just try to explain what's going wrong. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today and have your feedback so you can tell us a little bit what you think the conference should look like, what the conference should be. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Christina. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I'll take over now and I'll go into some of the things that we think makes this time and this place a good opportunity to have this conference. So I'll just share my screen. Okay. So firstly, welcome and thank you for attending this this discussion. And what we really want to get out of this discussion is to showcase a little bit about who we are, and then to get your feedback on what you want for the next symposium. So I'm not going to discuss each and every single organising committee member and where they work for, but I'm just going to quickly briefly show you who they are. So we have the local organising committee, chaired by myself, co-chaired by Christina McGraw and Rachel Hale. And that is a picture of me underwater here in Wellington. We have our local advisory committee. So firstly, the local organising committee will be the one on the ground doing the work to make sure this conference is a success, doing most of the organisation in terms of the day-to-day business. The local advisory committee, on the other hand, are a group of scientists who are very senior and have a lot of experience running these types of conferences. You'll notice a few names in there, past ocean and High CO2 World Symposia organisers, so Katrina Hurd and others that have been involved in this field for a number of decades. We have the International Advisory Committee led by Sam Dupont, who was just speaking, and involving people from all over the world, including myself and Christina McGraw as well. Importantly, we have the ECR committee, so the early career researchers, who will be involved in ensuring that this conference is an ECR-friendly event and that ECRs get the most out of this conference, and that we have a number of different ECR events that are planned that will actually be of benefit to them. So these are 50-50 New Zealand students, but we also have students from every continent barring Antarctica as well. So we have students and ECRs from North America, South America, Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Europe. Sorry, that's the lights in my office. It is night here in New Zealand. Why Wellington? Wellington and Aotearoa New Zealand are a great place to have a conference about marine life. Firstly, Aotearoa New Zealand is a central hub to the Pacific. We have strong ties with many Pacific Island nations and also places like Australia. We have a strong ocean acidification community. We were involved, this might not be known to everyone, but we were involved in the dawning of this field of ocean acidification research and have had a very strong community here since then. So for example, one of our ocean acidification conferences, our local conference that we carried out in Wellington, had around 90 attendees just from our New Zealand community. New Zealand itself has a really strong maritime history and a large exclusive economic zone, meaning this is a conference that will be very important to the people of Aotearoa New Zealand. Our traditional owners or Indigenous in New Zealand, Māori, they have very strong connection with the ocean, and it's hugely important. And particular species, they're really concerned about the fate of these ecosystems and species that reside in things like kelp forests, for example. Our event centre, Takina, is a beautiful building and can host up to 1,500 people. We wouldn't expect this conference to be that large, but it has the ability to have parallel sessions, to have flexibility that we'll need for this symposia. Why now? It's perfect timing since the conference in Peru. We have seen both the diversification of the field of ocean acidification research, and it's a key time to strengthen this field, and also to allow our up-and-coming ECRs, who will be future stars in this field, to gain exposure and also to mingle with other practitioners in this field. We're seeing the emergence of the importance of multi-stressors, and this conference will contain the key central theme of ocean acidification, but we will also find a home for some other sub-disciplines here. We're seeing the emergence of MCDR, and particularly ocean alkalinity enhancement, and things like multi-stressor fields, which were formed or at least have a large component of researchers from that ocean acidification community. And these subfields don't so far have a strong home. What are our goals? Our main goal is to reunite ocean acidification researchers across the globe here in New Zealand, strengthen ties between ocean acidification researchers and other disciplines, and to really integrate or put at the forefront Indigenous viewpoints and Indigenous researchers from this field and surrounding fields at this conference. What we want to know from you guys is what worked or did not work in the past. So many of us on the organising committees involved in this conference have been to a number of different symposia, including the past iterations of this one. So we know, for example, that perhaps hybrid symposia did not function that well at the last Ocean in a High CO2 World. We know that the community want to see more plenaries and keynotes from emerging stars in this field. Ocean acidification, we know, will remain the central theme, but we want speakers that will also push those boundaries as well. Some of the discussion that's been had is whether or not we can incorporate components of what has worked in other exciting conferences, such as Gordon Research conferences, into this conference. So, for example, I'm not saying we would have half a day breaks, but we could have, for example, 3-hour breaks in the middle of the day where we could hold other meetings or exciting workshops or training sessions, or give people a time to have a break. What we really want and we think would work based on the past is a strong ECR focus. So events, mentoring, etc., that's really focused on improving ECR, improving what they take out of this symposium. I guess what I'd classify as the fun stuff in the format. So what we want to do is have the conference being quite dynamic and flexible. So we're thinking about having 3-hour midday breaks. That's something we're going to put to you guys. In those breaks, we can have things like small workshops. People can go out scuba diving. We can have technical displays, instrumentations. We can have workshops that are both at Victoria University of Wellington, where I work, and at NIWA, which is now Earth Sciences. So there's quite a bit of flexibility there. We can also hold meetings within the event centre or in those two locations. What we really want to do is have some pre-conference workshops. So we have plans for training workshops, diving, for example, on our beautiful South Coast. So most of the photos you've seen in this presentation are either mine or my postdoc Bohard's photos from the South Coast, with a few Pacific photos thrown in as well. So it's a beautiful location. For example, I'm sitting there right now. Unfortunately, it's nighttime, but if it was daytime, I could turn my computer around and show you the kelp forest is right next to our marine lab, and we have a marine reserve right on the back doorstep of Wellington. What we also want to do is involve experimental design training. So we have a few ideas around that, and potentially show the scientists from other countries what's going on here in Wellington. So things like seaweed restoration, partaking in that, or discussions with community members. So at this point, we're going to switch over to a bit of a different format where we're going to go into some polls. So what we want to know from you guys is, what themes do you really like? We have the following themes here, and I can read these out. So of course, ocean acidification is the central theme for the conference, but we have these other themes as well. These are themes, not sessions. So there will be sessions within the themes. So these themes that we think would be interesting, but we want your feedback on, is multiple stressors, traditional Indigenous knowledge systems, science communication policy engagement, MCDR, ocean deoxygenation or hypoxia, marine heat waves and extreme events, socio-ecological and community-based adaptation, ocean-based climate solutions, and restoration/protection to address climate change, climate-driven changes in biodiversity and ecosystem resilience, climate change in fisheries aquaculture. We have a strong fisheries and aquaculture economy here in Aotearoa New Zealand, new technological advances in climate change research, changes in ecosystem services due to ocean change. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. I believe we're going to hand over to Rachel to take from here.
Yeah, I will try and launch the poll. Okay, so the poll should have popped up for everybody. And if I share my screen. So I'll just wait for some more answers to come through. People see the results to the poll? Sorry, I think I shared the wrong screen. So multiple stresses is coming out as pretty hot topic. Traditional and Indigenous knowledge systems, very interested in that. MCDR, very interested in that. Ocean-based climate solutions. So it looks like everyone's pretty interested in all the topics, which is awesome. But it'd be great to get anyone's thoughts on whether any of these were more interesting than any of the others. Unfortunately, due to the way that Zoom does the polling, we couldn't do a ranking exercise. Looking like multiple stresses is probably the one of most interest, so that's pretty cool.
Can you share the screen again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's not sharing?
Not for me, sorry.
Hang on.
I can attempt to share mine if you want.
Yeah, maybe try and share yours because mine's not.
Does that work?
I can see your screen.
Can you see the poll?
No.
Maybe it's one of those quirks of Zoom, unfortunately, where only the chairs of the Zoom meeting can see the results.
Can you maybe
Sorry
take a
about that,
screenshot?
guys. Yes. Well, it's quite large, but yeah, I can try and take a screenshot. That just shows you the top of the poll. Unfortunately, obviously, it scrolls down to more, but basically, we're seeing the largest amount of interest in the multiple stresses theme, which is nice. I think a lot of us are already working on multiple stresses, so let me see if I can access the rest of the results. Okay, assuming that everyone has responded to the poll, I think we'll stop that section now because it would be good to start thinking about the next part of the conference. So in a second, you're going to be assigned to different breakout rooms. But in each breakout room, we'd like to discuss your thoughts around 3 questions. So now's your time to have input on how we'd actually structure the symposium and what topics we'd focus on. So the questions we'd like to discuss are: what potential additional topics did we not mention in the themes that we've just presented that could be useful? So beyond thinking about things like MCDR, hypoxia, multiple stresses, what have we missed? what's your like pet topic that you really want to see spoken about at the conference. Christina mentioned how we'd like to run workshops and training and have lots of ECR opportunities around the conference. So do you have any experiences where that's gone really well? Is there anything else you think that we could offer? What would you, your colleagues, or your students find useful? And what interesting activities and formats have you seen at other conferences? So like I said, what's worked really well? What didn't you like potentially? And what would you like to see incorporated into the conference? So Chris mentioned the opportunity to have a longer kind of 3-hour style break in the middle where people would be able to do activities or have workshops or larger discussions, come together and have networking opportunities. So how should we structure the days of the conference? How many plenaries, for example, would you like to see? Keynotes? How would you like to run your conference? So, Katharina, can we send everyone to a breakout room and we'll just have a quick 10-minute discussion on each of these topics, and then we'll come back and do a quick summary.
Yep, I'll set out 5 breakout rooms and you should all be assigned automatically. So you should find yourself in a breakout room in a minute. See you there.
Welcome back, everyone. I heard that there were some really good discussions. I assume Rachel got sent back with the rest of you, so I'm going to hand over to Rachel again now, and she's going to lead sort of a 10-minute discussion with some reporting back so we can learn about what all the groups said. Rachel.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I think we'll just go around the breakout rooms. I think there were 5 in the end. And so if there was a note taker in each room, and if you'd like to do a very quick sum up of what your room discussed for each of the questions, that would be great. So if we could start with breakout room number 1, note taker.
That would be me. So we had some great discussion. We on question 1, we tried to think of like a broader scope, aka thinking about audience for those themes. And there was mention of maybe too many themes and maybe narrowing it down a tad. For question 2, something that was a priority was collecting sensor data and how to process that data as a workshop. And question 3 would be make sure there's funding for ECRs, which is a big priority for us, and more ECR oral talk sessions.
Perfect. Thank you, Holly. I was the note taker for breakout room 2. So for question 1, the responses were that most interests look to be covered, but we could also think about something specifically on total alkalinity and looking at the role of biology in influencing carbonate chemistry. For workshops, training, and ECR opportunities, we were interested in workshop to highlight case studies where experimental research led to actionable solutions. And Sam suggested something like the co-design framework of ORS would be quite nice, and that would fit together quite nicely. We had a comment that the Lima conference was nice and big and it was really varied. So that person was exposed to lots of different ideas and they had a really great time at the conference. So emulating something like that would be good. Running iconic events, which is the early career arm of the GOA-ON group. Not just presenting, so yeah, people wanted a chance to get involved in other things, and we're obviously hoping to be able to do that, and that training opportunities were given to emerging countries. For activities and formats, we were worried that if there aren't things specifically planned in the middle of the day, you could just lose that time, but we also suggested that we could kind of, as organizers, we could try and help people to use that time productively, and that we would all be able to have lunch together, and that keeping people together after lunch can lead to productive conversations. But in general, we wanted people to leave the conference with a deliverable in mind. So perhaps people could bring their projects with specific problems that needed solving, and think about the people that they could talk to at the conference who could help them. Breakout room number 3, would you like to give a summary of your discussions?
Yeah, that was me. So we're mostly discussing via chat, and we came up with, in terms of what additional topics did we not mention, we mostly were focused on physiological or adaptation, so actual responses of organisms, so whether or not those could be themes instead of focusing on actual, on just isolating things to drivers. So for example, themes on molecular and cellular mechanisms, adaptation, and extreme environments. Natural laboratories came up. So for example, CO2 vents used for ocean acidification. Are there other places that we can utilize for other drivers of change? Local disturbances and urban build-up, so from these mega cities and how they impact marine environments. Interdisciplinary approaches and the relevance to that. And then for what workshops, training, or ECR opportunities do we want or we find useful? There was a strong discussion about training and mentoring from students, with particular focus around experimental design for multiple stresses, which Christina will like to hear. Discussion on experimental models, career development sessions, and sort of soft skills / professional development, field and simulation training. So then for the third question, what activities, formats, etc. that we've seen work? So formats that are engaging, interactive sessions, sessions that could be enhanced by technology, and obviously networking and social activities should be a strong focus. Discussion groups. And then we had a little bit of a discussion about whether or not the conference dinner should be on the last day or the middle. One person was quite vocal about it being on the last day. Another person pointed out, well, if it's on the last day, potentially people might leave and miss out on it. So we're kind of split 50-50 there. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Great. Breakout room number 4, would you like to provide a quick summary?
Awesome. I think that was our group. So the first question, there was a lot of talk about some similar things that every other group so far has kind of mentioned, but an idea of doing data repositories and kind of how to manage your data, especially on an international scale with what's going on with the US, and just in general, how do we do better on that and kind of work together on those. And then we also were talking about having a session on how to incorporate molecular responses into OA research. That could be a panel or a plenary speaker, or even potentially a session if there's enough call for that. Similar to other groups, we also talked about having a session about sensors and what's working, what's not, or even if it's not a session, maybe like a discussion or a workshop. And then one also about water chemistry, very similar. Someone brought up that the GOA-ON has the box kits, like the OA in a box kit, and potentially that could be some avenue that we discuss for a workshop. Ocean acidification and modeling, and how to take advantage of both modeling and observations. And then question 2, we kind of had a lot of these bleed within each other, but there was a lot of agreement in the group I was in for an opportunity to do a white paper or a conference paper. Potentially also with working with groups of people before the conference begins to kind of get that going. And then we were also talking about how AI should be addressed in the conference, and no one really knows what to do with it. So that might be a potential area of exploration. And then what will get the students there is really funding. We did not have enough time for question 3. But yeah, so those 2 questions for us.
Had some deep discussions for question 1 and question 2 though. Breakout room number 5. Do you want to provide a quick summary?
Yes, I can. And brought up a really cool point about potentially introducing, I don't know whether it would be through a theme or otherwise, to talk about co-design and engaging the private sector and kind of future focused solutions, which I thought would be quite interesting, whether that be with fisheries and agriculture or even beyond, and thinking a bit creatively. But we did mention that that could come up through sort of multiple themes. Joan had a nice idea for workshops kind of looking at, similar to what you said, Ashton, about developing maybe a conference paper that came out of it. He was excited to see multiple stresses as a main theme, and was really interested in seeing more of these sort of open discussion sessions and not necessarily a traditional conference format. And then there were some ideas about kind of mentorship, particularly of people who new to some of these ideas around ocean acidification science and experimental design, and then also potentially looking at a data quality assurance and assessment workshop, design of experiments and remote sensing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we'll take all those answers and we'll report back to our respective committees, and hopefully we'll be able to reflect some of your needs for the conference. So if there wasn't another breakout room, which I don't think there was, unless Katharina tells me.
Nope, we had
Nope.
5 in total.
Perfect. Okay, so it's time for poll number 2, which I will share now. Oh, how do I access the other polls? Katharina, can you make them? Are you able to?
You should have access now. Sorry, Molly was still recording the results from the first poll.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Molly. It's not.
All right.
Oh, perfect. Cool. So this is really about what we talked about previously with that structured 3-hour catered lunch break, which would allow time for more networking, more conversations, potentially some short training sessions, some invited talks, ECR events, industry events, side visits, and other meetings and other activities, or just, you know, a personal break from the conference if you need. It can be quite intense. So how do you feel about that structured 3-hour catered lunch break? And what specific activities would you like to see in this block? So what kind of things would you like to do? I don't think I can see the results of that. Katharina, are you able to access those results?
I think we'll be able to see them once we've finished the poll.
Cool, perfect. Cool, so we've got about 5 minutes to just think about the different formats. So yeah, as I said, we could potentially do different training events. So we can also run mentoring sessions. We might try and do a mix of kind of formal invited events versus the potential to have rooms booked within the conference centre that you would be able to book out for side meetings, or rooms where you can go and have some quiet time, or rooms where you could go and work. Hopefully you wouldn't be taking too many personal side meetings from work. You get time to really focus on the conference. But we could also invite some industry partners. We could also invite aquaculture partners from New Zealand, do different site visits. We've got the potential to visit the invertebrate collection of Earth Sciences New Zealand, the potential to visit Chris's lab over at University of Victoria. So there's lots of different potential activities. Chris mentioned all the beautiful diving that there is just off Wellington. That's my top pick. So we'll just give it maybe another minute and then let Katharina close the poll, and hopefully we'll be able to see the results.
Yeah, should give the option to end to show the results after we end the poll.
And if you have any more thoughts and ideas after we've ended the poll, please just put them in the chat as well.
Now it'd be great to hear about anyone's ideas for any side events that they'd like to run, or anything that they're really interested in. Someone mentioned the GOA-ON in a box kit, and we've got lots of partners here based here in the Pacific who've received kits and who are using them. And so hopefully, yes, we would be able to do a run through of the GOA-ON in a box kit and chat about how that works, what's included in a kit, and how it's going in the Pacific for taking ocean acidification measurements. Any other suggestions for events that we could run within that 3-hour window? Serena, do you want to close the poll so I can have a look at the results?
Do you see them, Rachel?
Yes, I can. Yeah, so we've got an overwhelming support for the 3-hour catered lunch break. But I can't see the answers for the specific activities that people would like to see. But it does say that 87% of you answered the question. So if you did answer and you have an idea of what you would like to happen in that break, it would be great to hear it. Or if you want to type it in the chat.
Sarah, you've got your hand up.
One of the things that I found really useful at a lunch break at a conference I went to was like a mentoring lunch, and they had mentors sit at tables. It was a list of people known in advance. They did it. It was a 5-day conference, and they did it on day 2 and 3. And then as ECRs, you could find that table at lunch and basically have your lunch, but also you knew which mentor type person you were going to, so you could find someone that was relevant to your research. And I found that incredibly useful, and it led to me visiting them at their lab and things. And it was people that I wouldn't have necessarily known who they were.
Do you think about, on a similar vein, the potential of having like themed named tables? So like people who work on ecosystem impacts, people who are hardcore chemists like Christina, people who work on physiology.
Yeah.
So you can choose your table, and you already know that you're working in the same area, and you could start discussing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that could be useful. I think the key thing is making it not too large. So when I think one of the tables I went to, there was maybe 6 or 7 people, and it was kind of just you don't end up talking. You know, it's easy for 1 or 2 people to dominate the conversation. And in one of the tables, it was just like mentor and 2 of us, and I found that far more useful. So I think yes, themes can be useful, but if it snowballs into too large a theme, it can be too many people. Then nobody's getting very much out of it.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. So this is the answers to this second question.
Scuba diving.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Seems to be very popular. You sold it well.
Yeah, networking, creating. I saw iconic. Yeah, short training sessions, training about statistics, data analysis, data modeling, data management, different site visits. Yep, small tables on rotating themes. I like that idea. Co-design workshops, presentation of new technologies. Yeah, so we could talk we could invite people designing new instruments and get them to chat about it. Early career meetups, not at the same time as mentoring. Yeah, so we need to think about the timetable. That's really important. Yeah, cool. Would you be able to send that summary over to us, Katharina?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, perfect. So I'll now pass over to Chris because we're almost running to time, and he's going to wrap up and talk about the next steps.
Yeah, great. Let me just share my screen again. Firstly, apologies. I realised there was a mistake on my list of the International Advisory Committee where I left off 2 of the members, Bettina and Kirsten. Sorry about that, guys. So the next steps is we hopefully will see you all in October in 2026. And at this point, what we want to do is take the results of this discussion and other discussions that we'll be having through the week to better improve the conference and to ensure that it actually is what the community wants. So over the next 12 months, you'll hopefully see a lot of communication from us about this conference. And that's really it from me. And I really hope you have a good rest of your evening or day, depending on where you're from. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll just close by closing karakia. So I'll stop sharing my screen. This will be, and for anyone who wants to know what it means, some of you have directly messaged me asking, it means the life force within, above and around us and to all sides of our whare, which is house or home in New Zealand. Well-being for everyone united in our kaupapa, which is essentially our shared collective work. So I'll begin. Ko te Māori ki runga, ko te Māori ki raro, ko te Māori ki roto, te Māori ki raro, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, kia tātou, tū mai te Māori, humie, huie, tai ki e. And thank you all for coming. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for organizing this. And please also have a look at the GOA-ON website. We have a few more sessions lined up for the rest of the week, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.